Today, my guest is Deborah Ruf, a specialist in high intelligence assessment and guidance for both gifted children and adults.
Boys as a group tend to have a higher energy level.
Of course.
Yes. And so I wrote a story that came out a few weeks ago about 7-year-old boys, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the title I used. But boys have this need to move around. And little girls in the class are like, "Hello, teacher, what should I do now?" And the little boys are, "When are we done? And when do we do this? And when do we?" And I should tell you, I used to teach elementary school. So I had 7 years of teaching children I taught children who were 8 until 12, ages 8 to 12. And I learned, that's before I understood about giftedness. And yet I was a flexible teacher because I could think of many things at once as, okay, yes, I'm gifted. But that's important because sometimes teachers are not flexible, and the minds of the gifted children have lots of questions. And when they can't ask them and they can't get answers for them, and they're told to just do what they are told to do, more boys than girls will resist. And sometimes they won't do their work and they'll get bad grades because they didn't do their work. And that can happen to girls too. But one of the things that I was very, very fortunate about is a mother who had trouble in school. And she was very, very smart. And she grew up to tell me, it's more important that you are learning and that you are happy. You only need to get good enough grades. If you are gifted, you will always pass those tests, the standardized tests, and your grades maybe are not the very top, but it's okay if they aren't, if you learn how to be a good writer and you are doing okay on those national tests. And the thing is, there's a book about valedictorians, the people the very best grades in their class and when they graduate. There is very little relationship to eventual adult success.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that so?
Because grades are not about success. In fact, if you spend all your time doing what you are told and getting the grades that you know what the teacher wants, you lose your creativity. You lose your power to speak up. You wait for somebody else to tell you what to do.
However, you get very well adjusted to recognize what other people want from you. And what others
and
expect.
that can be very,
very social skills.
You can still be good with other people, but you have to be able to learn. And one of your other questions is about the children who want to save the world when they're only 6 or 7.
Yeah, that's from one of our listeners.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you tell them if you just get good grades in school, you'll see, no, that isn't connected. It's about knowing what you care about and then really doing all the reading and visiting and talking and learning in school and out.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying that nurturing giftedness in children is basically about teaching them about how irrelevant the grades are and how you should be able to do enough, but enough in the sense of, passing different stages of education, but nurturing your own talents and potential,
because some people think success is having a very important label, president, CEO, founder, or just rising to the top in their business. And they may be miserable, though. We don't want people to be miserable. We want them to be well adjusted. And you can be well adjusted when you learn what is really important to you. So the environment we set up for the children has to include them looking at what are they liking? What are they not liking? And yes, there's certain things they have to do, but not a lot of grade level stuff. The things that are happening for the other kids their ages may be totally a waste of time.
But getting back to this, you mentioned that children, that boys have a lot of energy, and even when they are gifted, they sometimes tend to be very stubborn and resist, the request, and then they kind of come across as not gifted, but just nasty and mischievous and the problematic children, right? And talking to parents here in Poland, that's a common experience, that for children, and especially it's about sons, they tend to not be recognized as
I have
gifted.
3 sons and 2 brothers.
I have only one, but I can tell, I feel what you are describing here. If you were to, and imagine you don't have any teachers at school who could tell you that, hey, maybe your child is not nasty, maybe he is gifted. What would you recommend parents? What signs should they, look for? How can they tell if their child is gifted at this stage of, first, second grade, the beginning of school experience?
The website, 5 Levels of Gifted, the first article we have on there is about the rough estimates of levels of gifted. And it gives you these guidelines for seeing where does your child fit. And so it doesn't cost anything. You don't give the child a test. You look at it. You look at what your child is acting like and can do. And they don't have to have every little detail that is on the list. These lists are just examples of what the children at different levels or degrees of high intelligence look like. Also, I don't know what you have in Poland. You may have heard of the Myers-Briggs.
Of course, yeah.
Peter? Okay. The Myers-Briggs I gave to everybody in the book. The parents
also for children?
Children? Yes, I gave the children's version to the children when they were children. And I kept their scores. And then they took the Myers-Briggs when they were over 20 years old. And all their parents had taken it back when they first agreed to work with me on the first book. And so I am able to see which personality types won't cooperate in school.
So which of us?
Yes, you can predict it from the Myers-Briggs. And you can also predict who is going to do what they're told to do, who is going to be nasty to you if you don't do what you're supposed to do. Like the teachers or the parents. And I have whole chapters that explain, but I've written pieces already. You can read them free. The book is just going to have it all right there. But I already have been putting all these pieces onto Medium. And you may read 3 stories on Medium a month, no cost. Okay? So you really can find these things. So the combination of what makes some kids hate school and some kids love school shows up. And getting really good grades just means you are willing to see what the teacher really wants. One of my sons, I kind of like this story. One of my sons, who is very smart, when he was in school, he really cared about getting good grades. And I told him not to worry so much. He would do fine. And he said, but he would in the fall, at the beginning of the school year, every year he'd be in tears. It's so hard. I don't know how I'm going to learn this. And I said, you say this every year. And he said, I do. And I said, yeah, every year, within a month or two, you know what's happening and you have no trouble. So we relaxed a little bit. And he said, well, but sometimes I don't get a good grade on the test that the teacher made. He did well on the state tests and the country tests, but not on the teacher tests. And teachers don't always know how to write good tests.
That's true.
Yeah. And so he said sometimes on essay questions or multiple choice, I choose the wrong answer or I don't know what they want me to say. And I'll tell you what they want you to say. They want you to say what they said in school. And he said, are you serious? You mean just regurgitate what they've said? And I said, yeah, sad, but true. And I said, so if you can remember what the teacher said and what was in the chapter you were told to read, put that down. But he was trying to interpret it. He was trying to make it more meaningful.
Creative, to add some extra value. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for a gifted child to be told they don't care about that,
that's heartbreaking, to be honest, because this is what you want to show to the world, right? That you can do something new, something creative.
And it does get better. The way the schools work, everywhere from what I can tell, they start with everybody in the same class by age, but then as time goes by, they move the children who are ahead. If they've cooperated, they're more likely to be there, sadly, in my opinion. But they are there with more children like them, and they also get the teachers who are clever enough in the subject to teach that subject.
Yeah.
There actually are different IQs for all the majors in college, university. In other words, for instance, people who have majored in the humanities are very smart. And when you get an elementary school teacher or a high school teacher and they've majored in English or the humanities or history or math, different maths and sciences, they may not be uniformly highly intelligent, but they may be. And so there are more of them by the time your child is getting older.
Of course, high school teachers tend to be more broadly prepared to different domains and have just broader horizons.
Yeah.